Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Good morning, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast. Once again, we're hoping to make this a regular thing with Jon Fetherston of the Maine Wire joining us for what I've decided to call today Tuesday Update, because I think we're going to do these Tuesday mornings to talk about just the different things. Obviously, he's making videos and pushing those out there. But just to hear what's going on in the state as things continue to develop. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on with the Lewiston shooting fund related stuff. But I'm sure there's a bunch of other things going on that people might not be as aware of. And so just wanted to give you some more time, Jon, to get in front of my audience and help the people of Maine better understand what's going on here in our state. Obviously, the Maine Wire is doing a lot of that through their reporting. In
Well,
general,
thank you
but
for
yeah,
it,
wanted
Chuck.
to
Thanks for having me.
continue the
Always honored to
discussion.
join you. Fraud in Maine, I think, is the most important.
You came off, but you're back on. So yeah, fraud in Maine is
Okay.
the biggest thing, I think, is what you're saying.
Well, last week when we talked, it was just before the State of the Union, and I think if people didn't see it or missed it, President Trump declared war on fraud in the country, and he specifically highlighted Maine, California, Massachusetts, and Maine, and he put J.D. Vance in charge of the war on fraud. And nobody is more excited about the war on fraud than Jon Fetherston of the Maine Wire, because the Maine Wire has been exposing fraud in Maine for years now. But certainly in the last, 8 to 10 months, we've exposed, gateway communities. We've exposed the Lewiston Shooting Fund. But more importantly, what we've done is I personally, with a majority of them, I've gone with Steve Robinson, the editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, but I've gone to probably a little bit more because he's a very busy man. I've been to over 50 home health care centers, people that bill MaineCare hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from these, what I call zombie office fronts, where you go and you never find anybody there. And Chuck, I always try to be fair and I always try to be, respectful. It's not, I don't go to these places once. I don't go to these places twice. I go to these places 3 times before I say, okay, nobody works here, or nobody's here during, they post their hours on the door. I don't post their hours on the door. So if you're there from 9 to 5, I'll go between the hours of 9 and 5 and try to talk to you. I've been to over 50 of these places. Anybody. And the one person I did find, I was with Steve, and the guy was there, and he was in the office, but he wasn't working. He was playing a video game. So how are hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, being billed? And I can't find people at these places. And I don't know. And I strongly suggest people go to the Maine Wire Facebook page or our Instagram page or our X page and just see some of the videos of where myself or Steve go to these, what I call zombie offices, because nobody's there. And just make up your decisions for yourself. It's, like, what is going on here? So the fact that the president has declared, war on fraud in Maine, well, come on up, come on up, JD Vance, come up, Dr. Oz. We'll show you where all of it is. But yeah, it has to be soon, because we've got less than 250 days till the midterm elections. So people say, well, why is that important? Because if the Republicans don't keep the House and Senate, it's going to go from talking about fraud to talking about impeachment of the president. If the Democrats get power back, it's going to be impeachment 24/7. And how do we know this? Because we've already lived this in the past. If Tim Walz was elected vice president of the United States, and I can't even believe I'm saying those words coming out of my mouth, there was a distinct possibility that he was going to be the vice president of the United States of America. You would never know about all of the fraud in Minnesota, because he and Kamala Harris would have hidden it from us. So we've got to get going. We got to start today. We have to, accountable. We have to expose the fraud. We have to put people in jail, indict people. We have to claw this money back, because if we don't do it, before the midterms, what's going to happen? It's all going to be, brushed under the rug. And this isn't fraud. And I've said, let's stop calling it fraud. Let's call it what it is. It's theft. It's theft of yours, my money. I'm speaking to you right now. I'm on 95. 95 needs some help here, and a lot of that's probably federal money. But, what does it tell you? When you hear that, Maine is not going to have positive job growth. Maine has, pothole problems. This is pothole season. You're going to have potholes. If we could curb some of the fraud, would we have potholes? I don't know. Would we have better schools? Would we have safer city streets? I spent the morning yesterday in Portland. I don't even know what the right word is. I would say I was disgusted. Maybe it's the right word. I saw an open in public drug deal right in front of the Portland High School. I saw people sleeping in bus shelters. I saw, garbage everywhere. I see, addiction as I drive down Preble Street. And I go, we have millions of dollars in fraud in the country, and we have this on our city streets. And then, later in the day, I went to Lewiston. And I saw the same thing in Lewiston. So I'm in the two biggest cities in Maine, yesterday on a Monday. And I'm not seeing the America that we're supposed to have. I'm not seeing, the Maine that we're supposed to have. And yeah, I know Maine is still vacation land, and, the coast is still the place to be. But when your two biggest cities are begging for help in broad daylight, and that there's fraud, and that the Democrat, agenda isn't talking about any of this, you just have to sit there and go, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Interested to hear what your thoughts on all that are, Joe.
Well, I'm interested. I'd love to get some conversations with some run-of-the-mill Democrats. Fortunately, with a new job I've got where I'm going door-to-door selling stuff, which is a fun experience. Got door-to-door for politics. What's door-to-door for sales, right? So I actually ended up having a conversation with somebody who has been elected to city government in one of our towns here in Maine, who is a Democrat, him and his wife. But he considered himself to be a conservative. But either way, it's interesting that they're very concerned, with where things are going. Because I know that you're saying we got to do stuff between now and the midterms. Hopefully, we can actually not lose in the midterms. I'm very concerned with some of the stuff that's happening geopolitically. that stuff that's happening out. One of the most annoying things, part of the reason I tried to create this podcast, right, and want to do this, and I think what the Maine Wire is doing is so important, is we're trying to highlight what's actually going on here in Maine, which should be the things that influence the election here in Maine. But unfortunately, far too many people are still focused on what's happening in Washington, D.C. and beyond. And they're going to vote based on that, whether their TDS is strong today or not. But like I say all that to say, I'm like, what's happening there, regardless of whether or not what Trump is engaging in Iran is good for the world and good, even if it's good for America. I hope that in the war room, that is what's like the primary concern, is that there's a reason that this is going on. But ultimately it doesn't matter to Maine politics, right? And so, but it is going to matter and have an impact in whether or not Republicans are able to gain some semblance of control and try to put some sort of an end to the fraud that's going on here in our state. And I think my question for Democrats, and I'd love to have some more conversations with them, like to have them come on, like, how can you continue, like, you may have concerns about Republicans if you're a Democrat, right? But how can you continue to support, like an administration or administrations that are blatantly engaged in fraud and have absolutely zero desire to fix it, right? Like that, where they're not clawing back money, they're continuing to allow these organizations to bill, like there's no accountability. And that's the thing that kind of blows my mind, is how few people seem to be concerned with, like, they just see this as Republican speaking points when this is just actual reporting on what's going on. Like, I mean, you're literally going to these places that supposedly exist. Nobody's ever there. These are basically shell companies that don't actually do anything, that are defrauding the people of the state of Maine. And unfortunately, I think many people on the left are just looking at that as like, racist conservative speaking points, or as one person called it to me when I was running for office, I talked about CRT, and they said that's just a racist Republican dog whistle, right? And so, like, that's what I think they may be seeing, but like I think we need more people, I think, on the ground to be mobilized, to be getting the information out that you guys are putting there, that we're trying to put out there. People need to be liking, sharing, subscribing, but it's more than just social media. People need to be having conversations with their friends and neighbors, because if the Democrats continue to maintain control, then we're just going to continue to get more and more fraud. It's going to get more and more expensive to live here in the state of Maine. And where are we going to be in 8 years?
Chuck, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't know if you did you see Dr. Oz's video? And he was highlighting autism care for children in the state of Maine. And what his audit found, and I want to stress this, 100%, everything they touched, there was flaws in it, either misbilled, misrepresented, 100%. Not 10%, not 5%, not 20%, 100%. So the federal government says, we want our money back. Like, how can you have any faith in something when 100% of something was wrong, was fraudulent? And that was done through an audit through the federal government. So, yeah, it wasn't a partisan audit. It was just an audit of the findings. And that's one program in the state. So if one program has 100% flaw rate, how many other programs have a flaw rate? And let's pray that they aren't 100%, but let's say they're 20%, 50%.
Yeah.
We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud and theft in your state. And if you're a Republican, Democrat, communist, socialist, independent, whatever, it should have just as much impact on you as any other. It's not fraud. Fraud is not, a partisan issue. It's exposing fraud. And what is fraud? It is theft. If you pay taxes and your money is not being used effectively and responsibly, you should be mad about it. It shouldn't come.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if I think we've lost you for a little bit, but even if, oh, I think you're coming back. But I was going to say, even if, oh, are you back? Yeah, sorry, you keep glitching there a little bit. But like, basically the point that I was going to say is like, even if you're a Democrat and you believe that the government should be spending money on programs to help people, you should be even more mad, I would think, or equally as mad, because this is evidence of the fact that the money's not going where it's supposed to be going. It's not supporting the people that it's supposed to be supporting. So like, you should be calling, if you're a Democrat, call your legislator. If you're not a Democrat, call Democrat legislators, but call them and be like, why are you not doing something about the fraud? You're making us look bad. Like, if you're a Democrat and you want Democrats to win, you should want Democrats to crack down on fraud and make sure that the money that is being set aside to quote unquote help people. And again, I have my issues with that. I think that when the government says that they're going to help, it's usually a scary thing, because they're not very helpful. They're really good at spending money. They're not good at actually positively impacting people's lives. Sure, they sometimes will help in a pinch, but in the long run, you don't want to be, suckling off of the teat of the government, if that makes sense. You want to be free and you want to be independent. That's empowerment. I keep trying to say that I think the Republican Party, we need to rebrand, and part of the rebrand is, I think that people don't care as much as a lot of conservatives do about how much money people are paying in taxes, if that those tax dollars are going to actually help people. People care about human flourishing more than they care about the specific tax rate. And so I think it's not always helpful to talk about we're being taxed, especially when a lot of people, don't have homes and they're not experiencing that level of taxes, or they're not getting as much money taken out of their paychecks and that kind of thing. So when we talk about taxes, they hear that as being, oh, spoiled little rich people are complaining that they're being taxed on their high incomes, right? This is how it's viewed by a lot of people. But I think when we talk about being the party of empowerment, that's what we are. We are actually, it's not only about the fact that we are being overtaxed, which we are, and that has economic impact, right? But it's also that we're creating slaves to the state, and we should be empowering people and giving people dignity and pride in who they are and what they're able to do and what they're able to accomplish, rather than like holding them down by having them be under the thumb of the government in order to make sure they don't lose those government benefits.
I agree 100%. And, the big, political word in 2026 is affordability. The Democrats are talking affordability. The Republicans are talking affordability. If you eliminate fraud from healthcare, does healthcare become more affordable? I mean, everybody's biggest line item right now is, out of your paycheck is your health insurance. Everybody's biggest line item, like I recently had surgery, like I'm talking a lot of money out of pocket. If you have somebody, getting services in these home healthcare places that are misbilling people, you're paying for it. You're paying for the loved one. And so you talk about affordability. If you can get 50% of the fraud out of MaineCare right now, what does that do to the price of healthcare in the state? It makes it more affordable. It makes it, more attainable. Everybody eventually is going to need healthcare in the state. And if there's rampant fraud in it, everybody should want it out of it, because you're eventually, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your people that you agree with politically and you don't agree with politically are eventually going to use healthcare. And it's just going to become so damn expensive because there's so much fraud in it that that people have to do it. And the point that you brought up about, Democrats, hey, if you truly care about people and you want to take care of people, then you should eliminate this fraud. And, kudos to you for bringing that up.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things that it blows my mind, and I have to wonder what Democrats are thinking right now. Maybe they're just, again, still so afraid of the horrible, awful, evil Republicans, which I don't think that we are, but like they have this view that like.
Well, I'll tell you what they're thinking.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what they're thinking, though. It's very, very obvious, and it's uncomfortable for some people to hear, but Janet Mills purposely grew MaineCare. It's the biggest line item in the budget now in Maine. She purposely grew it to create these NPOs, these nonprofit organizations. And I'm not here to say that this morning that all NPOs are bad, because that's not true. There are a lot of good NPOs out there doing a lot of good work in the community. But she grew this network through MaineCare to empower these NPOs because she needs them to keep control of the party. And when I say she'll allow and she'll overlook and she'll not hold people accountable, because when she runs for United States Senate, I'm going to need your employees to come out and hold signs for me. I'm going to need your employees to come out and hold fundraisers for me. I'm going to need your NPO to give me some campaign donations. And it's all right there for people to see. It's all right there for people to go look at. Look at Gateway Community Services, and look how Gateway Community Services grew and flourished under the Mills administration, and then just follow the money. Look at all the fundraising that Gateway Community Services has done for the Mills administration, and that's why Janet Mills has stayed mum about Gateway Community Services. There is no official statement from her. There is no written statement from her on any one of her websites. I think she did send a text message to one of the news outlets and says, yeah, there should be an investigation. But it wasn't until it was placed in front of the Congressional House Oversight Committee before she did that. Has she called out Decca DeLocke? Has she called out Youssef? Has she called out some of the other state reps that have been involved in this Gateway scandal? She hasn't. And the reason why she hasn't is because she doesn't want to upset the apple cart of these NPOs. And, she'll say,
Oh, I think we might have lost you for a little bit there, John. But yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're receiving, benefits, or when people are helping you, you're not interested in calling them out. We did for a little bit. We can't see you right now, but we can hear you, I think. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We just can't see you, but that's all right. So you were saying she's not calling people out like Decca DeLocke because she needs them to help her mobilize people to help her Senate campaign.
Oh, absolutely. She 100% needs the Republican Party to be strong behind her and help her. But more importantly, she needs these NPOs to go out and hold fundraising events for her and campaigning events for her. Yeah. I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah. So speaking of fundraising and campaigning and all that kind of stuff, on the gubernatorial side, you had mentioned to me earlier that you had the opportunity to go and hear, I don't know if it was a speech or something, but a press conference, I think is what you said, with the currently, according to a poll that I don't necessarily hold a lot of stake in, done by UNH, but according to them, Nirav Shah is the front runner. It appears on the Democrat side, which doesn't actually surprise me at this point. But he, I guess you'd said, held a press conference, and he's got some different ideas about how to quote unquote help Maine than I think we do.
Yeah, he held a press conference yesterday in Portland, and he discussed how he wants to, grow, free community college. Anytime a politician uses the word free, it immediately sends up signals to me. Nothing is free. Somebody eventually always pays for it. But another thing that he did was say that he wanted the government to help first-time home buyers by, helping them with down payments on the house. And people would certainly say, well, that really sounds great. Hey, the government's going to help me, buy my house. That means the government's going to own your house. Once again, nothing is free. Where is this money coming from? This money would come from other taxpayers and you. And so the government's going to help you buy your first home. Is it really your home then? Because nothing's free. And Dr. Shaw is a very likable, nice, pleasant, gentleman. I will tell you that. But you can't forget what he did during COVID, how he shut down things during COVID, how 22% of small businesses in the state of Maine went out of business during COVID.
Yeah. That's definitely a high number of businesses going out.
You can't
Yeah.
overlook that. And when you have loved ones had to die alone, now wants to use taxpayer dollars to make things free, it should be a red flag to people and go, how is this guy the front runner?
Yeah, no, it's crazy how I think part of the problem, John, that I see is how people, again, we talked about this earlier, people really aren't paying attention to what's actually going on. They're not doing the research, and I get it. Like, people are busy, they've got families, they've got kids, they've got all these things they got to bring their kids to and from. It's hard to stay up on politics, and I think they've been scared into any type of conservative news outlet or commentator being a conspiracy theorist, and so they're afraid to go look at that stuff. And so many of them are just getting their news from the mainstream media, and the mainstream media was really creative, I believe, in 2020, in 2020, 2021, where they talked about COVID numbers while Maine looked good. When Maine stopped looking good, they stopped reporting on it as much. Like, the data was still findable, but they stopped doing their daily reports. The newspapers did, and all the other main media essentially stopped reporting on the data once Maine started to look bad. And obviously they weren't telling the stories about, as you said, the like just think about what it's like for an older person in general who is getting to that point where they need to live in an assisted living facility. And then it's just like, for a lot of people who are in that situation, it's very scary, it's frightening, and there are all these fears. And so, like, the one comfort that they have during that time is their family members coming to visit them, right? And during COVID, these people, afraid and alone, lonely, were dying alone without being able to see their family members. So many people here in the state of Maine experienced that for a virus that, I'm not saying it didn't exist. It did, and there were some people that died as a result of it, but it wasn't nearly what they claimed it was. Nor, more importantly, were the actions of the government long-term beneficial overall. When you look at things globally, when you look at the education system and how far behind our kids are, a significant portion of that is because of what happened during COVID. And these kids are, I'm not saying they're never going to be able to recover, but it's really difficult, and they're going through intense amounts of anxiety, and as they tried to get back to what real life was like, and are trying to catch up because, like, their schooling was essentially put on hold because the educators were not prepared and were not ready to have to shift to online learning. And so basically especially that first portion of a year, they just didn't do anything. And beyond that, so the education system was all screwed up. All these 22% of businesses, as you said, is a huge amount of businesses, obviously, to close. And that the ripple effect of that on Maine's economy it can't be overstated. And so when you look at
if he did it,
yeah,
he did it once, that means he'll do it again. And it should be a red flag to everybody.
Yeah. We should absolutely.
It'll be interesting it'll be interesting if any of the Republican candidates for governor against him are going to, touch the COVID. I think America was so happy to finally be unlocked down that a lot of people have gotten away with not being held accountable. I mean, my personal opinion, Dr. Fauci should be in prison for what he did to the American people.
100%.
I'm disappointed that that he's not in prison. And a lot of mistakes were made. A lot of constitutional crises were created by the COVID lockdown, and people haven't been held accountable. But history does doom to repeat itself, and I pray in our lifetime that we never have another pandemic. But if we have another pandemic during a Shaw governor, what makes you think he won't shut the state down again? Because he did it in the past,
Yeah, he 100% will, and it's going to be worse. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's a game of escalation. I can't imagine that it's going to be better, right? Like they're not going to shut it down less if something happens. And they've essentially been I don't know if I'd say planning, but maybe they've been warning. I almost think the warning sounds like a threat, but they've been warning about shutdowns, about another virus, another pandemic. And I'm like, okay, like how often have we had pandemics in world history? And you're saying that now we're going to have another one just a few years after it. I know that there's a lot of people out there that talk about conspiracy theories, and it's like, oh, it's crazy to think that anybody released the virus. I think it's less crazy than some other people may think. But if we have another one in such a short period of time, I'm sorry, that's planned. I have a hard time, because like the last big pandemic that people talked about was like 1917, right? So like if we have another one in only a couple of years, then this is not a coincidence, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, cool. 100% agree. But but also, let's get away from the COVID talk. What I see in Maine right now, it's just one man's opinion. I'm actually headed to Augusta this morning. I see a state Senate that doesn't talk to the state House of Representatives. I see a House of Representatives that doesn't talk to the state Senate, and more importantly, I don't see them talking anybody to the governor. I see 3 islands up in Augusta. The next governor of Maine is going to have a huge budget problem. It's going to have a huge MaineCare problem, a huge jobs problem, and a huge affordability problem, and a fraud problem. The next governor has to be able to build relationships, and we'll have to build trust within government that maybe other parties that don't agree with them. You need a good manager right now to manage the state and put the state back on the course. And do you have that in any of the Republican candidates? I mean, Dr. Shaw is a public health doctor, quite obviously a very smart man, and a very when it comes to public health, but that's not the biggest priority in Maine right now. Pingree, another front runner for governor. Does she have that ability? I don't think so. I don't even think she's a good public speaker. And then don't even get me started on Shanna Bellows.
Shenanigans Bellows?
She can't even get a license plate right. How is she going to get the state right? So please stop.
On the Republican side, I do think that there are some great candidates there, and I think you have people who could manage that. I think you have people who could definitely work with people on both across. I know that Republicans these days, in particular, I understand why, don't really love the idea of working across the aisle. But the reality is, like, there are cases where you kind of need to be able to do that if you don't have full control. And I think it's though I would love to see a red wave, us win Senate, House, and governors. I think it would be very tough to see all 3 of those things happen. Let's hope and pray it does. But assuming it doesn't, or assuming 2 years down the road when there are re-elections, we don't, or like assuming we get a Republican governor and they're there for 8 years, at some point there are going to be Democrats most likely in controlling one of the houses, whether the House or the Senate, and you're going to need to work with them to be able to accomplish stuff. And so I do think that on the Republican side, you have people who have the capacity to work with people who they maybe don't agree with on everything to be able to accomplish things. I do want to highlight, though, that I don't think Dr. Shaw knows what he's talking about with public health. I don't care that he's a doctor. I don't care what position he had. I think, like, if he cared about public health, he would have cared about the kids that were at home and being abused, and we weren't able to uncover it during COVID. He would have cared about the psychological and physical impacts to children, the food related impacts during COVID. And the only thing that he seemed to care about was whether or not people died from COVID. And guess what? Children didn't die. Closing down the schools was incredibly detrimental, and only detrimental to children. Somebody who cares about public health does not isolate and harm children in order to sacrifice children and sacrifice our future to save people who are most of the people who died from COVID. I'm sorry to say this, but like they had other serious health conditions. And we don't sacrifice our children for people who are older and more sickly. I don't think we should sacrifice anybody per se, but like we shouldn't throw our children in front of the bus in order to save other people. We should willingly set aside our own lives and our own health and our own safety if need be, for the young and the vulnerable. And Shah did the exact opposite. So I cannot in good conscience say that he maybe he is smart and knows what he's talking about, but that just makes him, in my opinion, even more devious and evil for those actions. Sorry, that's very, very strong words there. Really quickly before we wrap up, because I have to hop off in just a second, there was just briefly kind of talk about, like, obviously we the Republicans lost the special election. Janet Bowden, we had a really great opportunity to get an incredible candidate in. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that, since you've been spending a lot of time in Lewiston. Just wanted to get your perspective there.
Yeah, I have a lot of strong thoughts on that. I see it as a huge missed opportunity for the Maine GOP. That was a winnable seat. You had a horrible candidate running on the Democrat side, so much that even the Democrats didn't really endorse him. They just told people to get out and vote. Janet Bowden is not only a very nice person, a very smart person, a very capable person. She's the type of person that you need in your state legislature. And I see it as a huge missed opportunity. And, here's the bottom line why Janet lost, is because Maine GOP didn't get the vote out in early voting with mail-in voting. That's where Janet lost. She actually won election day at the polls. Missed opportunity. I know she's going to rerun in November, and this is something that we have to run. You have to win. You have to win these winnable races, and and I say it all the time. Republicans who don't vote elect Democrats, and that's what happened last Tuesday. 19% of voter turnout showed up for that election between mail-in balloting and voting in person. If 50 more Republicans would have got up off of their butts or after work and gone and voted, Janet would have won the election. Yeah. And one more state rep up there, need to get involved. They got to vote. I mean, my opinion, voting is our greatest right in this country, and if only 19% of the voting, eligible voters are going to vote, that tells you that we got a problem. You got a problem on both sides. I mean, the Democrats have a problem too, because that means a lot of Democrats didn't vote as well. But people got to get up. They got to get out. Nobody despises mail-in voting more than me, because I don't trust the mail. But if your opponent's going to use it, then you have to use it too, it's disappointing, because Janet is the perfect candidate to send to your legislature. And Janet's got the same type of personality that she can work with people, and that's what I'm talking about in Augusta. I don't see a lot of people working with it. One of the greatest things about politics is your ability to work with people you disagree with, to come to common ground and to find a solution. Everybody, and Janet Bowden has that type of personality. Scott Harriman, who won the election, he doesn't have that type of personality. He doesn't have any type of personality. And do you think he's going to work with Republicans on an issue that he doesn't agree with, or try to find common ground? And a good politician will always try to find common ground on a subject and negotiate it, and I see that as the biggest problem in Maine politics right now. There is nobody willing to lead, through, negotiation and common good and common ground. And so you just remember, you're going to have to, because Janet's going to run again in November, because it's, this was a special election just to fill the vacancy until November. And, we can't have another defeat in November.
Yeah, we have to do a lot better of a job on our ground game in the state as we're helping candidates all across the state. We have to have a game to, mail in ballots again, as you said, like them or not. We have to take advantage. And I unfortunately I was not available. I've had some personal stuff going on myself. Um, uh, so I was not able to be around to be able to go door to door to help her myself, and I wish that I had. But I also understand that, like, on the Democrat side, on the flip side, we had they had, like, the chair of the Democrat National Convention, my understanding, putting resources behind their candidate there, which is crazy to me that they're getting that level of attention for that race, and we still almost won essentially, but we didn't have that kind of a it doesn't, from what I hear, and I'll have Janet on and maybe we'll hear some more in the next week or so, but it doesn't seem as though we had the same level of support from the Maine GOP. And this is not like, I think I part of me doesn't care because people get irritated when I highlight realities of things that are maybe not as helpful to the Maine GOP. They're not helpful because they're realities, not because I'm talking about them. Let's be very clear about that. And so if you're upset with me because I'm highlighting a reality, the reality is what needs to change, not the fact that I'm talking about it. So feel free to to see me as an enemy if that's what you choose to do. But this is the reality is that we did not put enough resources behind Janet Bowden, specifically around get out the vote, specifically around mail-in ballots, and so we as a party need to do better.
100%, and we've got nobody to blame but ourselves, and we've got to do better and take this as a teachable moment, and we'll do better in November.
All right. Well, thank you once again, Jon, for coming on. Sorry, everybody, that we didn't have a video for him for like the second half of the interview, but thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for everything that you and the Maine Wire are doing to expose fraud and corruption here in our state. I would like to say, in a sense, we look forward to hearing more about what comes out. I mean, we don't want the reality of what's happening, but we do need to be informed about it. So we look forward to hearing about all the bad things that are happening in Maine that need to be reported on. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to join you, Chuck. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. You'll see us back here next week. Most likely. I don't think they've got anything else planned later this week. So who knows, though? Stay tuned. We may surprise you. So, but thank you all for watching, and do everything you can to like, share, subscribe, follow the Maine Wire, follow the stuff that they're doing, and engage in the information war through social media, but also have conversations with your friends. That is one of the things we need to bring back, and that's how we win, is by having those conversations and helping them see the reality of what's actually really happening. So thank you all, and again, thank you, Jon, and we'll see you back here next week.